I've never been good at throwing things out, waste not, want not after all, but I find it impossible to know what is waste and what I'll never want, so I keep everything I think might have worth, which is everything I touch. How do you decide something has no value when it's the only reminder of who you are? How are you supposed to throw something out when it feels like the only record of the life you've lived? Is it worth keeping when its only meaning is you? These are whispers of your day-to-day life, formed through small tattered notes, worn-out hand-me-down clothes, on ticket stubs and torn wristbands, hidden in handmade birthday cards and old phones. What value could they hold outside of your old diaries? Excavated from the back of your wardrobe or the box under your bed? Would they still call out if you weren't there to listen? Would anyone else even hear? Tucked away in an old whiskey warehouse, there's a life's worth of murmurs calling out across the canal. Tattered notes, pages of long-winded letters, postcards void of even an ounce of wordless space, dog-eared books, margins littered with scrawled thoughts, invoices and bills and shopping lists, sketches and portraits and cards. The voices of those in the Alasdair Gray Archive travelled on roads that carry them and streets that echo back. Fixed in that old whiskey warehouse, those voices reverberate across the city that holds them to all those that can hear their words. I know the words though they're not mine. I know the voice though I've never heard it. They're not scraps from my life, but they call out to the tattered notes and manky old notebooks collecting dust in my bedroom. They natter on with the hand-drawn birthday cards in old friends' forgotten drawers. They ramble to letters and postcards sent and unsent. They gossip with the childhood diaries in my mum's loft, debate ideas with well-read books stacked in the room I shared with my sister. They aren't my scraps, they aren't yours either, but don't they feel like so much more than someone else's odds and ends, more than just someone else's life? Flipping through those books, meandering through those notes and letters, perusing those prints and paintings, sitting in that old green chair, doesn't it feel like they're asking about you? Those murmurs across the canal call out to a new box in their midst, filled with scraps of life just waiting to talk. A print from Kirsty Iona MacArthur, a print of a drawing of a flower growing from a pile of mud, surrounded in a frame and the Gaelic proverb, the weed that grows on the midden lifts her head the highest. Coming from Greenock, Kirsty chose this as the idea of growing and flourishing from something negative reflected their own growth coming from a working class background. This print is from a commission they got after complaining on social media about their new, more expensive Wacom tablet break-in. They then used the new tablet to create the images and made these prints by hand with whatever spare materials they had around the flat. A card from Kirsty Iona MacArthur from their parents to celebrate them moving into a new flat with their partner. Kirsty chose this card for its message. This is the beginning of anything you want it to be. They feel it reflects recognition and acceptance of their queerness and queer homemaking. A torn receipt from Holly Rennie Brown from Block on Bath Street with a handwritten note, I love you, and Holly's friend Rachel's signature at the bottom. Holly and Rachel met working for the same company when Holly was working in Sugo and Rachel in Pisano. Holly chose this as their friendship is very true and openly affectionate, especially notable coming from a space that isn't the most queer-friendly. 2 fragrant strips from Holly Rennie Brown from End, with the handwritten notes, love you and you got this written on them. They were given to Holly while she was working a shift in Sugo by her friend Rebecca, who works in End. Their friendship started with Rebecca visiting Sugo when Holly was working, and developed after seeing each other on nights out, like Ponyboy New Year at Stereo. A torn wristband from Holly Rennie Brown for a Ponyboy event. Ponyboy, a hair salon and club night, is run by Holly's friend Dill and their partner Reese, one of Glasgow's only club nights with welfare staff and a strong focus on supporting the trans community. Ponyboy creates a safe space for much of the queer scene. 2 notes from Scarlett Carty on white paper from one of Scarlett's former pupils. The note reads, to Miss Carty, I have loved you being my teacher and I hope you enjoy your treats, lots of love, and the name is redacted. On the reverse in bubble writing it reads, best teacher ever. Scarlett is a primary teacher who has been working on supply for the last 4 years. She works in schools in the south side, which is where she was born. She strives to make sure the kids enjoy her classes and loves her time with them too. A quote from Josh DeCristofano, an 8-ball jacket designed by Michael Hoban, which Josh found for £40 when they retail for £200 to £300. This is part of Josh's collection of 3 8-ball items. This suede jacket, a leather one, and a leather vest. Josh uses fashion to express himself, working as a drag queen under the name Soup too. As a working class person, Josh has to shop within their means to find items like this. He enjoys that the clothes become a conversation starter, easing him into social interactions with something to say and introducing him to some of his best friends. A scarf from Rebecca Diamond, a black and white neck scarf with the word homo written on it in an abstract font. Rebecca wore the scarf the first time she attended a Ponyboy event. A photographer and a stylist and enjoys using her appearance to outwardly express her queerness. A camera from Scarlett Carty, a pink film camera Scarlett bought when she first moved back to Glasgow after going to Dundee for university, where she met Holly. The camera documented her time in Glasgow, a difficult time at first, but enriched by memories with her friends and her queer community. She places real importance on documenting life and preserving it for the future. A copy of SingStar, 2 mics from Beck Ziola. The full set of 4 games and 2 microphones cost them £7.50. They bought this game when they first moved from Barhead in their early 20s to a damp basement flat in Kelvin Bridge. Every weekend they would play SingStar in their flat with their friends. It is a reminder of meeting like-minded people amongst Glasgow's queer and trans communities. They're just bits and pieces of lives you haven't lived, of lives you don't know. A print, a card, a receipt, a torn wristband, 2 fragrance strips, 2 notes, a coat, a neck scarf, a film camera, a copy of SingStar, 2 mics. But I swear they sound familiar. I recognise that voice. I don't own the print. I didn't make that blue flower or write that Gaelic phrase. But I know it. Its story of the weed growing tall on the midden gives words to a feeling I could never name before. I feel the blue flower sprouting through the estates I grew up on, hear its tale through every home I lived in. It speaks to the art we make for us, to the art we make to survive, and to the moments when they are one and the same. The weed growing highest on the midden sprouts along murmurs of that old whiskey warehouse, in prints and posters and books that gave life purpose and helped pay for that purpose to live. And I know it's not a card that was written for me. Doesn't it tell you about those homes we make for us and for all the parts we used to hide? Somewhere along that canal, near that card, a letter to a sleeping wife answers back, about a little flat in the city's West End, about the places and the people that become embedded within us. Doesn't that love from and those ands sound like all the someones you're linked to as well? It's not my receipt, they're not my fragrance strips. The love yous and you got this aren't for me. They laugh with the chicken scroll messages my best friend writes to me just because. They tell me about that feeling of finding someone like you in places filled with more people who aren't, of finding parts of yourself smiling back at you in a face that's not your own. They ask me how many people house pieces of me, how many prop these pieces up on the days they can't manage alone. The love yous and you got this seem to reverberate throughout that corner of the warehouse, in favours asked and gifted thank yous and faces that sneak their way into every story formed in words and pictures. The gratitude of being able to lean on people who can hold the entire weight of you quietly rumbles from the very foundations of the room. And the wristband didn't come off my arm, but isn't it like the one that's shouting over the music somewhere in my bedroom, dripping in sweat, its ears ringing, still singing and laughing about a night you'll never forget? Don't you hear the thrum of a collective heartbeat when you're in a room you know you belong in? Don't you hear it now, sitting in that green chair, staring out at the water? Those sweet notes didn't come from children I've taught. Still, I know them though. They sound like the voice you needed to hear growing up, the soft place you needed to land. They speak to the parts of us that still need the words. They reintroduce us to the parts we feel we've lost. In that warehouse, they resound with essays and articles, thoughts and opinions, and a man not afraid to be disagreed with. Responding in kind, the voices in those notes promise that we never stray too far from ourselves. The coat isn't a bargain I managed to thrift. God, if every part of my wardrobe isn't pleading for it to join though. It talks to the leather coats and the scuffed trainers about favourite charity shops and best vintage markets, of hacks and tips to finding identity without spending your rent money. It doesn't need to ask the importance of a mountain of clothes that speak so distinctly in our own voice, of boxes of objects that hold the words you want to say. Charming their way through life, they reintroduce us to the world with words we can't always say. A vintage coat finds partnership with an archive full of art and books, portraits and photographs, rugs and a green chair, and a life full of voices that chose their own narrative too. The scarf wasn't gifted to me, but it's so loud and proud in who it is, it's impossible to deny it's speaking directly at you. It bellows out when our own voices falter, tells the world what we don't always know how to say. It asks and answers the question of who our safe spaces are and refuses to allow us to deny ourselves the chance to find them. Here, in this room, in that green chair, it finds itself amplified by a booming voice that never stopped speaking about the things that mattered. I've never been photographed on the camera. It finds friends, though, with the photo walls and the Boots disposable cameras and the people we always keep in focus. They discuss the parts of our lives that make us, us, and reminisce on the memories that remind us of those parts when they feel too far to remember. It shutters through the pages of a photo album tucked away in another box, listening to meals out and in, of drinks and brews, of days and nights together, of a wife and husband, and the small moments that never end. And as much as I hate to say it, that SingStar doesn't belong to me. But the raspy throats and the out-of-tune singing and the microphone crackling find a duet with the laughs and jokes and people serenading my life. It hums along strings connecting voices who've screamed down those microphones, strumming away at the centre of a city linked by a community that refuses to stop singing for each other. Even in this old warehouse, it plucks the first note of familiarity in an unfamiliar place and finds a chorus in books and letters, art and pictures, and an old green chair that welcomes all the noise. They're just odds and ends, bits and bobs of lives you haven't lived, of lives you don't know. It's just a green chair tucked away in an old whiskey warehouse. It's just a box of someone else's stuff. A print, a card, a receipt, a torn wristband, 2 fragrance strips, 2 notes, a coat, a neck scarf, a film camera, a copy of SingStar, 2 mics. But don't they sound familiar? Don't you recognise that voice? Buzzing with life, every corner of the Alasdair Gray Archive sits and waits, always ready to tell a story of a man and his art and his life and the city they're in, and the city I'm in, and the city you're in. The archive may reach back to tell its beginnings, but it reaches forward too to find the ending. It reaches out to find the words and the voices that know how to say them. The archive story is only the start of a conversation, one that calls across the city it's in, the city we're in, murmuring across that canal, winding through that warehouse. Aren't those voices in the Alasdair Gray Archive reaching out to find you and your odds and ends, your bits and bobs? Aren't they inviting you to talk? Don't they know your words? Don't they recognise your voice? Oh.